According to a recent study, the human element is involved in over 80% of all breaches. To protect your business from insider attacks, it's critical that your entire organization understands what these threats are and learns how to spot or identify the common indicators and warning signs before it's too late. What are the warning signs? I'll be talking about those today. Hello, I'm Michael Kinnett, CEO and founder of Internal Networks. Every Friday at 1 p.m. Pacific time on our Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and my personal LinkedIn pages, I go live to discuss the latest tech and cyberspace news that might affect you and your business. At the end of our live session, I'll be taking questions from the audience. So if you have any tech or cybersecurity questions, get them ready and send them over. I'll be covering them at the end. First, the news. This is a big one. You may have seen this, you may have not, because it's very recent, just within the last couple of days. The tax prep site, efile.com, who millions of users in the United States use to file their taxes. Right now it's prime tax season, right? Taxes are coming due here. So their site was breached and was delivering malware to users that were accessing their site for weeks. From at least March 17, that's the earliest known instance. It might have been longer. Up until just this week, the website efile.com was delivering malware to visitors' computers. What would happen is the site would notify the user that they would go to efile.com, and the site would then say, sorry, site cannot be reached because the version of your browser needs to be updated. With a little button, right? Click here to update. Well, if you clicked on that button to update your browser, it would download an update.exe file, and if they ran it, it would load in malware to that user's computer. And this happened by hackers breaching the website and loading in a JavaScript file that would then run that command and that interface when a user first accessed the site. It's still unknown if the hackers were able to gain access to any of efile.com's other systems, potentially gaining access to any taxpayer data submitted through their site. So more information is going to be coming. It's fairly new, just within the last couple of days. So I would expect that as we learn more about the extent of the breach, that it'll be a little bit more prevalent in the news. Now for our discussion, we're going to be talking about insider threats. Now we've got a webinar coming up later this month where we're going to be diving deeper into insider threats, and I'll talk about that at the end. But I wanted to kind of help you understand better. Well, what is an insider threat? Who is an insider threat? Like, what do these look like? And so we're going to talk about some of these different aspects of insider threats. Basically, what an insider threat is anyone with privileged access to inside knowledge of your company's data or information assets, which could be infrastructure, operational strategies, etc. Right? Anybody that has access to that could pose a potential security threat. That's called an insider threat because they have inside knowledge, inside access to your system. There's a couple of different kinds of insider threats. I'm going to kind of explain the differences between them. One, you have compromised or exploited users. And what this type of insider threat is, a user whose authorized or privileged credentials, right, their login information, was captured via a phishing email or some other form of breach, and the hackers, the criminals, were able to use that user's credentials to then gain access to inside information. So that's one way, one type of insider threat. Another one is malicious and criminal insiders. And this is insiders that are using their authorized access to steal or expose sensitive data or deliberately damaging or destroying critical systems to intentionally harm the business or for personal gain. There's some studies that show that over 40% of breaches are financially motivated, and disgruntled employees manipulating the company's tools, applications, or systems have accounted for over 40% of breaches, according to this same study. Now, I have a story about this type of insider threat. This happened several years ago in Las Vegas. We were providing the on-site support for a global organization. So we were helping with their local network, local phone system, local infrastructure. One day we got a phone call from our main point of contact cell phone. and we were notified that their entire global organization was offline. Firewalls had been wiped clean. All of their servers had been wiped clean. They had access to nothing. Phone systems were down globally, and their call center was in Las Vegas. If any of their customers called this organization, and it was a private organization, you didn't hear about it in the news, despite it being a large global organization, because it was privately owned, privately funded, and there were no requirements at that time for them to provide any information about this breach. But as the days went on, right, we were able to get their local site back online after a couple of days so that their customers could call in and get the support that they needed for their products and services. But their entire organization was down. Email, main systems, login, access to everything was down for several weeks. And it was determined that it was an insider threat. A former employee who still had that inside access and information and passwords, a former IT employee, was terminated, was disgruntled, left, took that information, and over an extended period of time built all of these processes to kick off to fully wipe and take this entire organization offline. I don't know the extent of whether they prosecuted or anything. It was overseas is where their headquarters were. But this is a very real risk and threat. Now that's an extreme case, and most businesses will not face that type of inside threat, but it's possible that it can happen. We're also seeing the FBI last year announced several instances of ads being posted on the dark web offering essentially finder's fees or commissions for employees that would help them launch a ransomware attack on the organization that they worked for. They'd give them a finder's fee or a percentage of what their take-in was on that criminal attack. And so, I believe they even captured somebody and prosecuted him that did do that. So there are some risks out there, financially motivated, so just be aware of that. One of the other types of insider threat is, we've talked about malicious criminal insiders, we've talked about the breach credentials, right? So the next one here is negligent or careless insiders. I would say this is probably the most common. This is where a user with no intention to steal or jeopardize the business unintentionally exposes the company to security risks for the sake of productivity or efficiency. So if you think about that, right? So we've talked about in the past on my live streams and blog posts and other stuff, I talked about shadow IT. That's a big part of this, right? It's them downloading an app to try to make their job easier, to be more efficient, or to help do things better. But maybe they download it from a questionable site, or it's a questionable piece of software, or they get an email about something that they click on and do things, right? So this is unintentional, but can cause, massive damage to the organization, right? So a negligent employee or contractor is the cause of over 50% of reported insider threat incidents. So that's over half of them. That's big. The final one I want to talk about today is external or third-party insiders. So these are independent or third-party partners, vendors, or contractors that have access to certain internal systems or data assets, or have some sort of inside knowledge or information about your business. So if they're breached, right, then that's a risk to you. Think about it like a supply chain type of attack, right, where somebody else is breached, but they have inside access to your information, and now they have those criminals have that inside information as well. Now, what type of, you may think, okay, well, insider threats, yeah, great. What type of risk do I have? Well, think about what those users have access to, and that's your risk, right? Your primary business assets, such as your business financials and account data, your customer employee data records, any trade secrets, any of your infrastructure information, right? Corporate intellectual property, program code, trade secrets, all those things are potentially exposed to an insider threat. And the consequences of that can be massive, right? You can have your customer data exposed. You can lose trust of your customers. You can take financial losses and incur additional costs to try to recover from this attack that comes as a result of this insider threat. And you could also, the criminals could expose your corporate intellectual property or trade secrets on the dark web, damaging your brand and your reputation and limiting your ability to be a successful organization. And last but definitely not least, this could lead to regulatory compliance fines and penalties that may be very heavy to bear and keep operating. So what can you do, right? How can you spot warning signs and indicators? And I'm going to talk specifically signs and indicators for those malicious insiders, right? For those disgruntled employees that maybe are doing things they shouldn't be. There are often, insider threats are often the hardest to detect, but there are some things you can look for, both digitally through software monitoring and also behavioral, that you should be monitoring to be aware of things, right? So some of the behavioral indicators could be repeated attempts to bypass your security controls, or taking steps to hide or camouflage their activities or what they're doing on their computers. Maybe that's working or logging in frequently during off hours, right? In the middle of the night, times where they're not typically working. Well, what are they doing, right? If they're doing something out of the ordinary, that's an indication that something odd might be going on. If they display disgruntled behavior, often or over a long period of time, right? Acting odd or withdrawn or anxious with colleagues or with management in your organization. Some of the digital indicators, right, would be that user obtaining or hoarding large amounts of data. If you start getting notifications, if you're monitoring and you see that, oh, Bob just downloaded 100 gigabytes worth of data to it, that's odd, right? That may be an indication that something is going on, right? He's downloading customer data with the intention of taking it, going to a competitor, selling it, doing something with it, right? And so keeping an eye on that, right? Them employees that are searching for and saving sensitive or protected data, accessing or requesting access to data assets that are not associated with their job functions, and then also using personal or unauthorized USB, SD cards, or other type of portable storage devices, right? These are all indications that maybe they're collecting data and trying to gain access to things that could lead to some sort of an insider threat exposure. So there's lots of other things we could talk about with insider threats, and we're going to be covering some of those on our upcoming webinar. Insider threats are a growing concern in cybersecurity, and they occur when an employee or trusted individual within the organization intentionally or unintentionally causes that security breach, as I just discussed. So it's important to understand the risk that your organization has to these insider threats. And for our upcoming webinar, Lindsay Hayes of Breach Secure Now is going to join us to discuss and explore ways to prevent insider attacks and increase your organization's cyber resilience by implementing specific secure access controls, employee education and training, and ongoing monitoring and threat detection. So that's going to be Thursday, April 20th at 1 p.m. And in the past, those of you that have joined us for our webinars, you've had to register for our webinars and join a special Zoom link that if you didn't register, you didn't have access to it. Well, we decided we want to make this as easy as possible for people to join. You don't have to register, you don't have to give us an email address, a code, nothing, right? We're going to be holding our webinar live, publicly in a live stream across LinkedIn, Facebook, and our YouTube pages. So save the date, add it to your calendar. It's going to be, like I said, Thursday, April 20th at 1 p.m. Pacific time. And join us on any of those platforms. LinkedIn, if you're connected with me on LinkedIn, you can gain access there. Our Facebook company page and our Facebook YouTube page. So if you don't know how to find, one of those and you'd prefer to watch it on that other platform, let us know. We can send you links. But hopefully we'll be able to see you guys on that live webinar. Let's see here if there's any live questions from the audience. Hopefully I didn't lose too many people when my camera went off. I don't see any questions. So we'll go ahead and wrap up then. If any of you do have any questions that come up that are watching this after the fact, please contact me, direct message me, or through the website at ITNet.works. Hope you guys have a wonderful Easter weekend with your families, and we'll talk to you more next week. Have a good one. Bye.